Hello! As always, welcome back to Phantasy Star 4. For most people, I agree, considering much just came out of there. And... oh. Hooray! They managed to survive however long it took for us to go fix the problem. Normally I kind of oppose think of the children cheap emotional shots like this, but I think I'm okay with what happened here because, first of all, it wasn't in your face. In fact, it's very easy to miss. And also, it doesn't seem like something that was just thrown in. It's more like kind of a logical extension to what was already happening. We got plenty more unstoned people to talk to. That doesn't sound especially sacred to me. In fact, it sounds kinda Silent Hill-ish. I won't say no to a better axe, but the big deal is with the armor shop. I've already done all of this off-screen. If the last store was everyone except Han, this store is Han only, which is fine because he needs the help the most. With the new gear and shield, he has roughly the same defense as the rest of my party, provided he's dual shielding. But I still won't put him in front because his hit points are not so great. Oh, it's a plot bridge. I've seen plenty of those. Speaking of talking, gotta make sure not to miss this. I'm glad they're self-aware like that. I'd say about half of the problems are the Research Academy's fault. Oh, I'm sure we'll check up on them, but the way this game is going, I think okay is very unlikely. I've never heard an elderly person say that. At least, not out loud. I hear it in their minds, because I'm a mind reader. No, I'm not. I'm not. Okay. I mean, I can understand the point behind a book like that, but it still sounds a little bit sinister to me. I'm a little bit too zealous in not missing a person to talk to. If this town is cursed, then every town is cursed, because we've walked around enough to see that this is not the only town with problems. Well, every town except Krupp, maybe. The monsters here are the same as last time we went through. But the game has been building up this place since the start, so I think there's gonna be something significant to this. And not just because I've played through the entire game more than once. I'm a little surprised that these guys didn't say something along the lines of "Get me out of here," or "I'm hurt, please help me with wherever I've been hurt." This is not the first JRPG to have an ancient advanced civilization as a major part of the plot. However, it is much better integrated in this game than in most, because in this case, the ancient civilization that you're digging through is the setting of Phantasy Star 1 and 2, and as such, it has a very different feel as you explored the last pieces of it after it collapsed 1,000 years ago. Especially because all of the characters in the party don't know anything about this civilization, which you're likely to be very familiar with if you played the earlier games. It's kind of surreal. Welcome to robots. Robots resist fire and water. They usually have good stats, and some of them also resist physical attacks. Fortunately, swords work just fine against most of the robots in this dungeon, but just you wait. On the other hand, we'll have more kinds of tools to deal with them at that point, so it more or less evens out. I'll just be grateful we're not dealing with Phantasy Star 2 robots. Those things were terrifying. Now, you might sometimes see me checking a character's stats after gaining a level. It's also worth mentioning, although you just observed, that these robots do not resist things like Tri-Blaster. And that's because Tri-Blaster is, I wouldn't say its own thing, but there are a lot of different damage types in this game. I think there's 14, and not all of them, of course, are the traditional fire-water stuff. I already mentioned Chaz damage, but Tri-Blaster is a different type of damage, which I guess you could call it laser damage. It's mostly used by machines, and it's known for being the closest thing you get to non-elemental in this game, which is almost everything is neutral to it. Sometimes this can be a big improvement over what you would usually have available to attack with. So it's an attack type worthy of note. Going back to checking my status after level ups on occasion. This game doesn't track stat ups from level gains very well, in that it knows that you gained a level and you gained these stats, but it doesn't actually apply them until you change party order or go to the status screen. It's a little weird that way. And the only other game I can think of that was that jank with your character status was Lagoon, and, well, that had many problems, and the update thing worked to your advantage, although I guess that's a little off topic for this. What the upshot is, I'm definitely going to check my status or change order before a boss, or after a significant number of level ups have been done. And you look familiar, but you're a different color now. The palette swaps, they have begun. I guess that sort of thing is inevitable when you're making detailed monsters with custom animations. And I think overall there are enough unique monster designs that it doesn't hurt the game too much. Also, I think that thing is weak to crash, because both in my practice run and in this, I've never seen crash miss. And, of course, when dealing with a boss-like random encounter, that is very handy. I don't remember how much damage poison deals because I've always had the resources to just stop and remove it the moment it happens before I take a step. But I think it's just an out-of-battle thing in this game. And these guys are very tough. I think they're the most dangerous encounter in the dungeon, especially when there's 3 of them. There's also encounters with 1 or 2, and I much prefer those. I think I got some low damage rolls this time. Now you may have noticed that I haven't used the bros technique yet. There's a couple reasons for this. One is something I kinda hinted at earlier, which is your success rate is based on your stats compared to the enemy's whatever stat it targets, and in general your stats grow faster than the enemies, so instant death stuff tends to get more accurate as the game progresses. Especially if you know how to target monsters that are weak against whatever you're using. Unauthorized, huh? We'll see about that. And Neo Whistle is a robot worthy of note because it is the thing in this dungeon that actually does resist physical attacks, and its evasion is pretty good too. Now, fighting 1 at a time isn't too bad, but if it was 2 or 3, it's probably worth using a Tri-Blaster. Oh, they weren't kidding that it was prohibited. The earthquake? Were there earlier earthquakes here? I forget. I don't think so. Oh, hello. Yeah, in addition to all the other things about those guys, they hit pretty hard, so there it is. Of course, I might have to be a little more conservative with that sort of thing because Tri-Blasters, I only have 2 of those left. Also, Chaz learned the Escape Dungeon spell. And remember that macro I was setting before? Remember how I said I'd find a use for Alice's Zen technique even though her power was not that great? Well, there it is. An area of effect, or all enemy cold attack, is gonna be pretty nice around here. Especially outside, but even in dungeons there's plenty of monsters that are weak to cold. This music track is a remix of a dungeon track from Phantasy Star 1. Now, I am showing this off for a reason too. And you'll see it in just a minute. I think critical hits have some kind of defense ignoring property. Also, as you observed that very close call, I'd like to remind you that we have no reviving tools right now. If someone got knocked out, I'd probably have to just go back to town and start the dungeon over. In previous playthroughs, when I was just on my own and a fair bit younger, I had no hesitation to grind in just about any dungeon to catch up a bit with whatever monsters were around there. And yes, that includes the robot monsters. This time, as you've observed, I'm being very straightforward with my exploration, and I'm doing minimal grind.
So I'm probably going to encounter problems that I did not before just because I was over-leveled. I think it has a good chance of being interesting. Well, I wouldn't say identical. It is a different art asset, but yeah, it's very similar for sure. I'm sure you've noticed that all of the battle animations are very short. Even in the endgame, all of the high-level moves are like this. The longest combat animation in the game might be 5 seconds. I appreciate how the devs know how many encounters there are going to be in the game, and they made an effort not to let things get tedious. Phantasy Star 2 played pretty slow by comparison, and don't get me started on some of the Final Fantasy games. Well, speaking of problems that I didn't encounter the first time around, it doesn't take a lot of examination to know that I'm getting really pinched for resources at this point. But hey, this might help. Although, is that made of what I think it is? Let's check the description for that. Yeah, it is. It's as it says, a sword made of ceramic. That's not my first impulse when it comes to material for a weapon, but okay. Phantasy Star has some strange technology. I guess we'll roll with it. The stats don't lie. And that's just the kind of encounter that I was talking about and would prefer to avoid. Once again, my last Tri-Blaster, and I don't have a whole lot of healing resources left either, even after abusing the wood cane. Wow, I did not mean for the phrase to come out that way, but I'm gonna leave it in. Fortunately, we reached the end just as our resources ran out. Well, hello there. You look familiar. Rika! Part human, part biomonster. She's named Fowl in the Japanese version. I don't know why some of these renames happened. What? Han! It was described as an ancient civilization in the first gaming session by Professor Holt to Han, probably. And he's been walking through it. I don't know why that statement was such a shock to him. When Mother Brain was destroyed in Phantasy Star 2, it was implied that all of the systems governing the environment would shut themselves down or be destroyed immediately. But I guess some of them were designed to be independent enough that they could keep going on automatic pilot for a while. Still, 1,000 years without maintenance is kind of a long time, so it's not surprising that we have problems. I also don't recall too many talking computers in that game. Though, if considering that they had autonomous robots, it's not too surprising.
Well, we got an explanation of why we have the problems, so that's the first step. Yeah, I agree with Grizz. If they're causing more harm than good now, we have to at least slow down what's happening, and that might give us some time to come up with a more permanent solution. I'm a little surprised that the characters who haven't dealt with pretty much anything technological before understand everything so quickly and readily, but who knows what kind of records have been passed down since the Great Collapse. They might have known that this sort of thing was a thing. Well, we knew we were going there sometime, so I guess it's just about now. And we know that Alice is excited about this because she's not charging anyone money to go on this ridiculous expedition. She sure is. That prototype they were talking about, well, that's Nay. Rika is a redesign of Nay from 2 games ago. One of the head writers just wanted her to be Nay Reborn, but the entire rest of the staff told him no, and I agree with them. Phantasy Star 4 has characters that are living callbacks to other games in the series. As such, Rika is here to represent Phantasy Star 2. Note that line that we have to spread this information as much as possible. Hold on to that. Uh-oh. Yeah, she's spent her entire, well, I say entire life, but you'll see why I kind of put quotes around it, underground, just learning from a computer, so seeing that stuff herself, gonna be pretty intense. And there it is. I can only guess at how much knowledge was lost right there. But I guess it still beats monsters killing everyone. Well, let's check her status, shall we? That is not a typo. Rika is 1 year old. Well, she's already outlived Nay by a good 5 months or so. Newmans grow up fast, so her education must have started incredibly early. Even so, she must have learned fast beyond belief. I can't imagine that she's going to stay naive for very long. Now, let's talk to the principal. I'm sure he'll have some things to say. What is this? Alright, first of all, the scientists around here have already been talking about these very serious problems quite openly. So there's about as much chance of keeping this whole disaster secret as they did keeping the whole monster outbreak secret. You saw how that turned out. And second, the principal must have said something persuasive to the professor because he changed his tune really fast.
those Locust Enemies also appeared in Phantasy Star 2. They were some of the very early enemies. These are new, though. And if you don't know how to tackle them, they're quite tough. Aside from the damage they deal, they resist physical attacks. However, cold works just fine. And if there was any character who had an excuse to start at level 1, it would be Rika. And as I just said, she is a fast learner and she will catch up with the party in no time. And we got another town with major problems. But this time it's not due to the climate or Zio. These are just, I don't know, these are unfortunate times. We took a glimpse of the big crater to the north, and, well, that's the result. I think we have more towns that are ruined or in bad shape than we have healthy towns, which, from a narrative purpose, is perfectly fine considering that everything in the story has been talking about how things have been falling apart. Well, except the text at the beginning that said that civilization was on the rise, but I think we can safely say that that was just before all these things started to happen. Yeah, that sort of thing, it'll happen. Phantasy Star 4 is a lot less edgy than its predecessors, at least in most ways, but the writers didn't forget to include that, hey, people do these sorts of things, they don't need outside monsters or disasters or anything. Well, okay, this did need a disaster, but it wasn't something that brainwashed people, let's put it that way. Yeah, we got... I like the attention to detail here. People are living in tents, there's all kinds of damage all over the place, and people are really bitter about the families that lucked out. It's pretty solid writing, I think. Okay. Well, we definitely want to investigate the crater, but... yeah, that's a good idea. But I think that'll have to wait. We've already been through a pretty significant dungeon and plot reveal. The sort of person... oh, yeah, making kids stop being friends with each other. That is a human thing to do for sure. Yeah. Did you want your house to be saved? No, I wanted the other people's houses to be wrecked too. That's also a human thing. And I think that's about it. We'll investigate whatever's in the crater next time and move on from there. Well, see you then.